Hey, can you believe people really thought we were going to be reviewing a tape deck?
Oh, you mean
I was like, wait. That was one comment I really wasn't expecting,
the tape deck comment?
especially considering how long the Dragon has been out. Like there were legit people in the comments that
Yeah.
were like, I'm really disappointed you're not reviewing the cassette tape. And I'm like, what?
I mean, to be fair though, the Nakamichi Dragon line of products from the 80s and 90s, I mean, they were around for a minute and they were really something. They were really good. So if anyone is more of a nostalgia YouTuber in terms of audio, maybe they watch like that channel, I think it's Techmoan or something like that, where all he does is talk about more used vintage stuff. I'm sure just Nakamichi Dragon would have shown up in their search results. So I can like in your and I circles, we're a little bit perplexed. Like, why would you think it's a cassette player or a record player? But I think that's just the power and the quote value of, I think, the Nakamichi Dragon name, and just unfortunately the soundbar that we are probably going to be talking about today has no affiliation with the Nakamichi that people probably remember and think pretty fondly of.
Okay, well, I just thought that was funny. I thought it would be a good way to ease into this episode of Unplugged, which is, I believe, number 19.
Yeah, I think so.
Can you believe it?
I can't, but here we are nonetheless.
Well, look, before we get into how mad everyone is about our Dragon review, Audiomania has what I find to be a genuine question about something you said in your review.
Okay.
They say, I had my reservations about the Nakamichi, and you've just answered many of my reservations.
Okay.
And thank you for this. That being said, you honestly believe soundbars are the future of home theater? As a purist, my take may be subjective, but I don't think that's the case. Audiophile purists may have a different point of view as well. But what makes you think this? I'm honestly curious.
I think soundbars are the future of home theater, kind of just based on their adoption rate. You know what I mean? Like, it's very easy to participate in a hobby and participate in what I will consider to be a higher level of the hobby. And that is, you are consuming media content, you're watching videos like this, even though technically you've already, bought in. So this isn't so much a research tool, at least not all of the time. It's equally entertaining, and it's just something that you want to associate with. And when you're that level of enthusiast, it's very easy to think that there's millions like you. And in reality, we're a very, very small niche. And if you add us all up, we may not even add up to the total number of just Samsung Q990 whatever letter bars are sold in a single year. And that's just one SKU. That's just one brand. You've got Sony's offerings, you got Samsung's offerings, you got clips, you've got this, you've got that. And I think that whether or not it's the future because it's better is not what I'm arguing. I'm saying that more and more people are actually getting into the concept of surround sound, Dolby Atmos and whatnot via soundbars than I think they are traditional systems.
I would totally agree with that. Well, speaking of audiophile purists, something I've wondered, and a couple of other people are posing some questions as well. It's like, who is the Dragon for? For example, Rafael Franco says maybe this is a case of manufacturers providing what customers really want.
Okay. I think customers want soundbars. I'm not entirely sure or sold on the idea that customers, the broader sense, want something like the Dragon. I don't pretend to have insider information. Obviously, our communication with the brand has been almost non-existent. But if I had to go out on a limb, I would say that the Nakamichi or the Dragon has been designed to capture a small percentage of a hybrid market. And that is either people who have had discrete full systems that are now in a position in their life where maybe downsizing benefits them, retirement or whatever, or people that are on that fence of, do I go like full clip system or whatever, or can I get close? I really think that Nakamichi has been smart in positioning the Dragon more towards like it's a replacement for a true home theater. Like when you stop and I say the word home theater, what you visualize in your head, I think they're smart, but I don't know if it's what consumers ultimately want. I think they laser focused on a very small group, and they pushed 100% towards that goal, doing and using terminology and methodology and marketing that has historically spoken to a customer that would have otherwise maybe been on the market for like a Klipsch reference Premiere setup.
Well, Rick Brooks says, when I sold hi-fi equipment 20 years ago or so, I'd get customers say, I bet those get loud, more than I'd like to admit. And it sounds like the Dragon is marketed towards that sort of consumer.
Yeah.
I really do feel Rick is making an interesting point here. And I do agree with some of the things that you've already said in response to Raphael's comment. Because for me, it seems like the Dragon has been primarily marketed as a traditional home theater system replacement.
Yeah.
Nakamichi makes it a point to say the Dragon competes and is actually king amongst systems that cost as much as $30,000. I mean, seriously, it's right here on their website.
Yeah.
It's definitely not aimed at the typical soundbar shopper, from my perspective. In fact, a lot of Dragon owners seem to get a little offended when you even call the Dragon a soundbar.
Yeah, that's confusing to me, by the way.
Right. And furthermore, a lot of Dragon owners say that they are coming from a traditional system. And so with that in mind, I have such a hard time understanding the willingness of this audience, especially the ones that are, have typically been, nothing can replace a home theater system, that their willingness to forgive or overlook so many of the Dragon's apparent flaws.
Yeah.
Because let's be real, the hi-fi and home theater audience has never been shy about telling you when something isn't worth it, or how product X is just a cash grab, or if a product leaves out feature X or Y. I mean, this audience can be ruthlessly unforgiving when a product doesn't meet their expectations, especially when it costs anything near what Nakamichi charges for the Dragon.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, I just really need someone to explain to me why it's so different with the Dragon. I mean, while there are a couple of people in the comments, like Raul here, that says this is a $3,100 plus sound system, and at this premium price, we expect premium everything. And that's the kind of reaction I would have expected to hear more of, because I 100% agree with Raul.
Yeah.
As far as the build quality, like the entire system, to me anyway, it looks and feels cheaply made. At a minimum, it looks no better made than any other soundbar that's currently on the market. And I would argue that a lot of them look of better quality. I mean, maybe with the exception of that Enclave system that we were sent years ago. Do you remember that?
Oh, right.
Yeah, I mean, that thing
was a tank.
But it look and felt cheap.
Yeah, there was just a lot to it.
Yeah. And it didn't sound that great either. So,
No.
And from a design standpoint, which maybe it doesn't matter to everyone, it does to me, the bar itself looks overly designed, like there were just too many cooks in the kitchen, and rather than take out an ingredient or two to simplify the design, they used just everything they had in the kitchen.
Yeah.
And I mean, we haven't even gotten to the Dragon's limitations, much less how frequently it would appear that they arrive with some sort of physical damage. I mean, how many did you find on eBay?
Oh, dragons?
Yeah, I mean,
Oh,
there's dozens.
Nakamichi, this isn't a secret. Nakamichi sells open box, returns, B stock, refurbished dragons. And according to their eBay page, they've sold 29, I think, when I last checked. They've sold 29 refurbished Dragon systems through eBay in the last 30 days. And oddly enough, they have sold, gosh, the number was either 16 or 19 of the limited edition 1 through 500 units refurbished on eBay. So people can return something for any reason. It just didn't meet your expectation or whatnot, and you have every right to return a product. And so, and Nakamichi has every right to open those products up, make sure everything is still in working order, and if it's not, correct it and put it back on sale at a lower price. Every manufacturer does that. So I'm not knocking Nakamichi for this practice, but what I am saying is that it would appear, especially for a bar that has been advertised as being manufactured in limited quantities. I think at one point Nakamichi made a graphic that said that they could only make like 5 of these at a time. And I don't know if that pertained to just the limited edition ones or if that's just how it is. So, they've got months supply, if you will, of used open box or whatever products that would appear on eBay. So it's not as if everything is arriving intact or that every single person that gets a dragon is pleased with what they have, despite, some of the very passionate responses that people have to the contrary when other people express their maybe negative or more critical opinions.
Well, speaking of those limited editions, there's a commenter, John Dio, who claims that they were a part of the initial 500 pre-order crew.
Oh, cool. Okay.
And that they were actually in charge of giving feedback to Nakamichi before the formal mass release.
And they were on our channel commenting?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I guess I missed that one.
Yeah. And according to John, the group made suggestions to tweak certain features, settings, and etc. And that they say, I want to say that they updated the software twice based on initial user testing by the first 500.
So wait, is John suggesting that the limited edition Dragon owners were kind of beta testers?
I mean, that's my interpretation of what...
Because that's what it sounds like.
What John is saying. I mean, I know that, if I recall, the Dragon was initially a Kickstarter. Wasn't it a Kickstarter campaign?
I tried to look this up. I vaguely remember something about Kickstarter back in January 2023 or following CES, but I don't know. And when I did a search on Kickstarter, I couldn't find anything. So I don't want to speak completely out of turn. Kickstarter sounds right, but it may have just been... Maybe we're just confusing it with Fossey or Whim or something like that.
That's how they begin their product launches, is basically through a Kickstarter campaign, which is another...
It's its own thing.
Its own thing.
It's its own thing
altogether.
I do recall there being like a pre-launch, and there was quite a bit of buildup for that pre-launch. And I remember, kind of like Taylor Swift tickets, quite a few people saying like, I'm hitting the button and I'm not getting through. And I don't know how much of that is, legit or not. It could come down to, yes, there was that much demand and that much whatever and blah, blah, blah. And, it is like a Taylor Swift concert, but it could easily be a way to make something seem scarce. And I only bring up it could be a way to make something seem scarce because in the end, like if even me 18 months later, if I want a limited edition model, I can get one and I can get it from Nakamichi with a warranty. So,
I thought this comment from John was interesting because you don't really have to look very hard to find other people who own the Dragon that have concerns or want or wish it did XYZ, or are looking for software updates or better bass control, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So I would be surprised that those types of comments that we still see today were not a part of the initial 500 user feedback. And how did we end up with what we have today? You know, a lot of the story, I guess you would say, behind this product is just, it's really confusing to me.
Yeah, some of the math doesn't math. And look, whenever we're doing any review, and I do mean this, any review, because Nakamichi was not treated any differently. I know you all have your conspiracy theories and blah, blah, blah. They were not treated any differently than any other product. The problem that we had with the Dragon was just the fact that we got it, and I'm comparing what the brand and the manufacturer is telling me with what I'm experiencing. And then before I go off half-cocked or with an agenda, like a lot of you got in the comments and said that we had, I just Googled Nakamichi Dragon. And for the better part of an afternoon, I ended up on AVS Forum. I ended up on Reddit. I ended up in Google Images. I was just kind of everywhere. And I was seeing other people with photos and confirmation that they were real Dragon owners having similar experiences to what we had. And I'm looking at the timestamps of these posts, and they go all the way back to last year, when the first units were actually starting to arrive in like August and September of 2023. So it's not as if, in my humble opinion, it is not as if what we have described or called attention to in our review is the first time anyone, including Nakamichi,
especially Nakamichi,
has heard it. Because, I mean, a lot of these threads have been shut down or turned to read only, but they still possess the screenshots and email replies by Nakamichi, I think they call them head ninjas or something like that, in response to, hey, what is the Subwoofers crossover point? What is its actual rating? Is that plus or minus 3? Is it plus or minus 6? Hey, I'm having a dropout. Is there a way to do XYZ? My subs aren't working. Or I don't think the subs, when I turn something off, I don't think anything is happening. How are you getting 3,000 watts of peak power? Like, these are all questions that other people have left in kind of some frequency, And so I get that everyone's experience is going to be different, and everyone's list of priorities in terms of, I can overlook that, or that doesn't matter to me. I don't care about this. I get that. And that's what makes this great. And that's why if you have a Dragon and you're watching this and you love your Dragon, I want you to continue to love your Dragon. But my job is to look at what is being, quote, sold, and that can be physically and marketing wise, and see if the two come together or coalesce in a user experience that mirrors what is somewhat being promised. And when it doesn't, I have a responsibility to raise my hand and say, hey, I can't necessarily corroborate this. I can't, someone help, someone, what's up, and I'm not alone. I'm just going to say I'm not alone, even though the people that love their product, as with any product that people love, I can take this so far away from the Dragon, it's not even funny, are very passionate. And I don't want those people to feel attacked. I don't believe they should feel attacked. At the end of the day, unless you have some sort of vested interest in the brand, I don't understand why sometimes people take it almost personally, like their job or a part of their livelihood, or they had a hand in it, without disclosing it or something. Like, I don't quite understand. Like, I'm super passionate about a lot of things, but I'm also okay if you don't share that same passion. And I don't sit here and tell people like they're wrong or call them clowns or whatever. It's like, you do you, man. It's fine. So yeah. Yeah.
Oh, well, I'm totally with you there. I mean, what were we watching the other day? That scene where they were like, I don't care enough about, what was it?
Oh,
what was that? It was so perfect. I was like, we got to
no.
save
Oh,
that.
it was Love Is Blind UK.
Yeah, we
Love
watched
Is
some
Blind.
trash.
One of the female contestants said, "I don't care enough about you to lie," and it was biting and very sharp, but in a weird way. It's like I don't have a horse in this race. Like I've said probably 100 times by now. The only people I care about in terms of like, am I doing right by them, is you, the viewer. That's it.
Oh, for sure. I mean,
That's it.
any frustration is just because we want to bring you what you're asking for.
Yeah.
That's really what it comes down to.
And to be perfectly blunt, I personally, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, I don't believe in that video. Okay, can I be just 100% honest? Not that I'm not, but it drove me crazy as I was wrapping up the Dragon review, because I knew this was coming. Like I just knew that there's going to be a small but very vocal portion of our audience that is going to take absolute umbrage with everything. And they're probably going to take umbrage all the way down to my hair, my shirt, or, whatever, my tone, my phrasing. And so when I sat down to record the Dragon review, I probably spent more time in my setup than I've ever spent on a video, making sure that everything was right, because I wanted to know at the end of the day that this product got my very best effort, because I knew everything I was about to say was going to be used in a way to discredit my experience. And so it sucks for me that even a small, like 20% of the audience, like hate me because of this review, even though behind the scenes, I genuinely think this is maybe one of the best reviews I've done in my career. And it sucks to know that I don't ever want to deal with this again. I don't ever want to rewatch this review. I want to put this to bed. And it just sucks when it's like, I think I did my best work, and I really wish I could snap my fingers, Men in Black myself, and forget it.
Yeah, I'm totally down with that. I mean, I would love to also forget it, because, it does get a little awkward when you see what happens when you don't fall in line with what other people think, or what maybe even a brand wants to have their customers believe. And I get it. They're in their job is to sell products and make money, but some of the stuff that's been going on behind the scenes, it's like, are you serious? And then to see even other reviewers on their own channel, like making comments, talking completely out of their ass about things that they know nothing about.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't even know who you are, honestly. So what? It's just disheartening.
Yeah.
But anyway, I want to move on to the bass, the subwoofers.
Okay.
Because, you touched on those briefly before we got into everything else. And there were a few comments that I want you to have an opportunity to respond to.
Okay.
Boysen says very clearly the subs are unloading at 20 hertz, and I think the sound at that frequency is the sub hitting its limiter hard. It's obviously a trade-off, and then there's an argument that most bass content is above 40 hertz anyway, so to hit the highest SPL possible, they limited extension. Sadly, that does make it a non-starter for a true home theater replacement.
And to be perfectly blunt, I would be 100% okay with that. If that is what they said when describing, talking about, and presenting their subwoofers to the world. That's just not what they have told people. And I completely get it. Like 40 hertz, a lot of cinematic stuff doesn't go above or below 40 hertz. I get it. A very, very good friend of mine in the industry who helps design speakers and subwoofers pretty well, actually, has this saying that he told me years and years and years ago: get 40 hertz right, and people will think that they spent more on a sub than they did. And he's absolutely right. He's absolutely right. And if Nakamichi had come out and said, or even just put qualifiers on their frequency response, like virtually every other brand does, that little plus or minus 3 or 6 or 10 or 12 dB that's usually accompanying a reported frequency response, if they had just done that, at least we would have an idea of where we really should be falling. But they said 20 to 40, man. And I'm sorry, like there are subwoofers, the Kef that's right over my shoulder here being one of them, where it's like they're advertising, whatever they advertise. I don't want to speak out of turn, but when subwoofer companies advertise a frequency response, plus or minus, they hit it. They hit it. And while the bulk of bass in movies may be 40 hertz and higher, that doesn't change the fact that if you're going to go on record as saying you can do something, you better do it,
Especially at $4,000.
At $4,000. And especially when you've made a big deal in selling consumers on how you are so much bigger, better, and different than what they can go and expect from, say, the SW5 wireless subwoofer from Sony, when in fact, that's not really true. You're not any better or worse. You are just a bigger wireless soundbar subwoofer with a couple more drivers. But in terms of the performance, the actual real-world in-room performance, it would appear that they can't really do any more or less than other very nice, capable subs that are sold with soundbars.
Well, this next question I thought was a very unique one. Constantino says, it seems that the bass limited their bar to achieve higher SPL in order to provide cinema-like levels. If you think about it, it does bring you the cinematic experience of most commercial theaters. Too loud, too bright, too harsh, too messy. So is it just me, or cinema sound needs to change ASAP?
Well, there was one anecdotal story that popped into my head when we were doing our very first listening tests and evaluations of the bar. It took me back to the El Capitan Theater.
Oh my gosh, what was that? Oh, it was a terrible movie.
Thor: Love and Thunder.
That we walked out of.
Yeah, we walked out of after about 15 minutes. This isn't a commentary on the movie, and you got to know that living in LA for 15 some odd years, I love the El Capitan Theater. It's one of my favorite venues.
Oh my God, it was all he talked about.
It's all I would talk about.
He was like, you got it.
Yeah, getting to get her to go to her first El Capitan experience, I won't lie, I was actually more excited to just kind of watch her have the experience.
Oh, he hyped it up.
I did. I hyped it up like a dragon owner. Too soon? Okay, sorry. Anyway, it was awful. It was awful. And keep in mind, I don't believe they're in business anymore. I don't know if someone's bought the naming rights, but I'm going to say they're not in business anymore. But I was a projectionist and a sound a booth guy, a sound booth and projectionist guy for Mann Theaters. And at one point I was offered the job at what was then Mann's Chinese Theater, which is right there on Hollywood Boulevard. And I rode the levels and the calibration of the theaters. I took that real serious, and we had guidelines and things like that. And granted, it was an analog system back then. You know, it was much different than how movies are exhibited today. But yeah, I kind of agree with you. Things are getting out of hand. And like I said in my review, I won't deny the Dragon its volume and just raw output. Anyone that says it can't do it, they're lying. It can. It does it easily. It wants to do it. And so if you're coming from an El Capitan-like experience and that was agreeable to you, I will tell you beyond a shadow of a doubt, if you need the ease of a soundbar system, nothing will give you that forceful, impactful, in-your-face sound that I experienced and walked out of at the El Capitan with my baby over here, like the Dragon. And if that's what you want, that's the product for you. You should buy a Dragon. You really, really should. But if you're coming from a place where it's like, you know what, I revel a little bit more in nuance. I like on a second viewing of a movie, I'm kind of hearing something a little bit different, or that not every stem in a mix is treated with the exact same volume. This is not the bar for you. It's just not. It's not the solution for you. There are better options.
100% agree with that. Tech Samurai,
Oh,
who's
yeah.
one of our regulars,
Yeah.
is sort of, it sounds like they're suggesting maybe it's a sub placement issue. They checked out Linus Tech Tips, their review of the Dragon, and Tech Samurai says he also mentioned the lack of mids, but he had the subs right under the soundbar, which is probably what Nakamichi should be recommending. Put the soundbar suspended between the two subs. Sub placement takes a completely different meaning for the Dragon, as the sub is part of the soundbar. And I just can't say that I agree with that at all. But
No, actually, I agree. I agree. Given how it would appear that the bar does not play that much lower than 300 hertz, which is mid-range territory, and knowing that the subwoofer is at its strongest between about 40 and 100 hertz, with no matter what subwoofer setting, or I'm sorry, crossover you use, there's a dip that the two slopes don't appear to overlap into a relatively cohesive line. They appear to always, no matter what your setting is, overlap with a bit of a valley or a dip. So knowing that, I think it makes perfect sense that the recommended subwoofer placement, not only in the manual, but in all of the congratulations you've bought a Nakamichi Dragon email that I know are just pre-written. But when I purchased the Dragon, I think I got 3, maybe 4 emails from Sean Head Ninja, I think is how they were signed. Forgive me if the name is wrong. But just like saying, hey, just before you get it, it's en route, but before you get it, remember, read this paper on subwoofers. Take a look at our quick start guide. Pay attention to the sub. I mean, they hammer this subwoofer thing pretty hard. And that's fine. I have no problem with the brand trying to educate consumers on what they can expect before a product even arrives.
I mean, and you even applauded their app. I
Yeah.
think it was the app. Like, it was very educational.
Yeah, the app, the app on the smartphone. Once you create an account, give them your email address, and tell them a couple of your associated equipment pieces. Next to almost everything in the app, there's a little question mark icon, and you can hit that, and it'll pop up a window, and it will literally tell you what you're adjusting. In theory, some of the things it tells you you're adjusting, it's not actually adjusting, or it's not adjusting to the degree that maybe the description will lead you to believe. But all that said, it's a great way to learn terminology. Like, I don't know if the app would work without, I don't know if you could go download the app, even if you don't own a Dragon, it would still require you to give Nakamichi email address, which maybe you don't want to do. But anyway, but if it would work, if it would launch, if nothing else, if you're one of these people that watch our videos and you're like, oh, what does this mean? Or all this terminology goes right over my head. It's kind of a nice little glossary. I got to say, I kind of dig the app. I do. I mean, it's a little clunky here and there, and it's the responsiveness to commands. It's not the best, but in terms of like, here is the information that we're trying to let you have in order to better your experience. I would say 90% of it is on point. It's on point and it's pretty good. And I wish more people would do that with their apps. I do like that. But yeah, going back to the subwoofers, having had this experience, having bought it and lived with it for a couple of weeks, I wholeheartedly would recommend people try and keep the subs as close to the bar as possible. I really would, because distance is only going to increase that gap. And it's important that people understand that while we photographed the bar one way, understand it was tested both ways. It was. And I will say that the gap is still always present, but like a lot of soundbar systems, keeping the bar sub relationship closer does help make things sound more coherent.
Okay, well, I want to shift gears just a little bit.
Okay.
This is, I'm going to call this section Features You Didn't Call Out.
Oh, okay. I got criticized for being too critical or for calling out too many things, so I can't wait for this.
Right. So there were a few comments, well, several comments actually, pointing out that the Dragon's AMT tweeters, or that they have AMT tweeters,
Sure.
wondering why you failed to bring them up. For example, Solus8 says, why no mention of this premium option in the Dragons, speaking of the AMT, that they had, and also a lot of other high-end speakers have. What a miss by Andrew. I mean, I have to ask, are AMT tweeters really considered premium? Because you can find them in a lot of entry-level speakers that cost like $500, $600.
Yeah.
Like, for example, the Martin Logan Foundation B1 bookshelves that we reviewed. They have them, and they come in a way nicer package. So what makes the Dragon's AMT so special, much less premium?
Okay. I'll first answer the question, why no mention? You're probably not going to like my answer, but because I'm showing them to you, it's a video, and you can see that it has it, and I only have so long to go over everything. And obviously, a lot of you noticed that this was a 30-minute video when the vast majority of the videos we do are 17 to 21 minutes. It was just one of those things. I really felt that there were a handful of videos already that did little more than tell you and literally physically count like one tweeter, ha ha ha, two, so it's like you don't need me to rehash that part, especially when I'm literally showing you imagery of the bar. You can see them. As for whether AMT tweeters are premium or not, I think when they first hit the market in mass about, I'm going to say 15-ish years ago, I do know, because of my past affiliation with Emotiva, I do know that they did cost more to incorporate into a speaker compared to, say, a soft dome tweeter. Now, when I say they did cost more, it's not like Emotiva was spending hundreds of dollars for that tweeter compared to 3 cents for, a soft dome tweeter. It was a little more money, and not a huge amount. The kind of little bit more money that you kind of sit there and go, they're basically the same. But, people that are running a business will go, no, 25 cents adds up over, 500 units. And they're not wrong. They're not wrong. But that's a manufacturing thing. Now, the longer these types of tweeters have been on the market, the more and more OEMs and the more and more manufacturers have come to market with their versions. And so that has brought the cost of these types of components down to the point now where I believe that AMT tweeters are a way for manufacturers to just visually differentiate their product from, say, something else. It gives something to point to and go, look, we have this, because for 15, 20 years, the common mindset has been that AMT tweeters are new and higher end and better. But in 2024, I don't believe that to be the case. They are just another type of tweeter in a sea of tweeters.
Johnny O says, so Johnny O is an owner of the Dragon sound system.
Okay.
He's very clear to point out, in parentheses, not Soundbar, since Christmas of 2023. Johnny, huh?
It's not a soundbar. What is it?
Yeah. Johnny uses it exclusively for movies and spatial audio discs.
Okay.
One thing he points out is you did not note that the system is wireless. So there's no speaker wires to run, no speakers to mount in the ceiling, which is important, an important factor to older audiophiles and to the younger audience. Younger audience isn't buying this. Who does not want, who does not want to invoke the labor involving running speaker cable, mounting into the ceiling, which I understand.
Yeah.
That does translate into money. The other thing Johnny mentions is, despite the Dragon not having built-in, this isn't really something you've left out, but this is kind of their justification.
Okay.
Despite the Dragon not having built-in room correction,
Yep.
I would argue that an audio/movie file will pull out their SPL meter and check the auto room correction settings. Many times I will just adjust these settings.
Okay. There are a lot of people that don't want the Dragon to be labeled as a soundbar, partially because Nakamichi themselves don't want it to be labeled as a soundbar. And they'll carry that torch for the brand. But it is. And there's nothing wrong with that. There really isn't. This is the one thing where I'm going to actually defend anyone who wants to be pro soundbar and wants to say, yeah, but even the Dragon's easier to set up. Physically in a room, put the bar below your TV, place the subs where they're going to work, put some surrounds to the side or behind your couch. It is just as easy to set the Dragon up using that metric as any other soundbar. So to Nakamichi's credit, but they also didn't revolutionize anything in doing this. They literally followed the soundbar formula. Now, as far as the lack of auto room correction, this is where you and I may disagree a little bit, because the auto room correction exists in soundbars as low as $300. I'm paying a premium price. In my humble opinion, I would have expected something like, and this would have been a great marketing tool. Nakamichi, if you're watching, probably are. Here's a free idea. I would have expected a bar like the Dragon to come with Dirac, to be the first soundbar with Dirac. Wouldn't that be awesome? Wouldn't that make your little hairs stand up and go, now I know what I'm buying? Can the Samsung do that? Nope, it can't. But instead of even attempting to do a basic automated PEQ adjustment, a la, say, what WIM has just implemented for free, they did nothing. They did nothing. And while you refer to setting the individual driver levels as calibration, yes and no. It is calibration in that you can set the individual driver levels, and you should, as I point out in my review, you need to set them so they're all level matched for best spatial results. But in terms of tuning and calibrating, the Dragon gives you global tone controls. Treble and bass, that's it. Global. And when you adjust bass, it really only affects the subwoofer. So there's no way to kind of start to try and bring some of these peaks and valleys into better alignment. And the treble really only affects this, top end of the bar, which in my case, I quite enjoyed and needed. But it does nothing like PEQ would. Now, PEQ can't solve anything. Solve everything. Room EQ or automated room systems like Dirac can't solve everything, but they can help. And there's not even that level of help in the Dragon, and at the second most expensive soundbar price, to my knowledge, the Bang & Olufsen Theater being the most expensive soundbar on the market, if memory serves, to be the second most expensive system in existence, and to have the least amount of features or just general conveniences, especially in the face of products that are a few $100 having that, I just think is unforgivable.
Well, okay, moving on. Ryan from Texas was curious to hear more about the spatial audio performance and comparisons.
Okay.
That was something that was felt that you maybe missed a little bit.
Okay. Just so everyone's aware, I obviously, like I just got done saying, I level matched all of the speaker drivers. I paid extra close attention to the upward firing drivers, because oftentimes, based on ceiling height and all of that, which you also have to enter in the menus, by the way, based on ceiling height, you sometimes have to end up turning those up a little bit more so that the reflected volume is equal to other drivers and speakers in the system. So I did all of that. I did not rely on the default settings. Spatially, when I played demos specifically designed for spatial cues using Dolby's own Blu-ray or DVD discs, using a couple of dedicated apps on the Apple TV that have some spatial animations built into them. If I used that material, the Dragon was impressive. It was even as good as what I also was able to experience with a Bose Smart Ultra system, with a Sonos Arc system, with a Samsung-ish system, although we did not have the Samsung at the exact same time, but I do have an Arc, I do have a Bose and all of that. It was on par with those systems. But when I switched to just movie content, which can vary, for example, the movie Free Guy, the climactic battle, I don't want to say any more than this, but there are a lot of overhead cues. The Dragon struggled to present some of those overhead cues, specifically some, I don't want to give anything away, but wood falling from the sky. The Dragon struggled to present that with the same level of precision and clarity as the Sonos Arc or the Bose system in a direct head-to-head. It's not that it didn't do it, it just didn't do it as good of a job in our room. And even turning up the overhead, the surround channels and whatnot, didn't quite bring it home. You know, in the front to back cohesion of the overhead effects, there were gaps. Now, you need to be aware, maybe our room is on the larger side, or maybe it is too big for the Dragon. I don't know. I wouldn't think so, given how massive and powerful the Dragon is. But there was about 18, 19 feet of distance between the main bar and the surrounds. But understand that while you go, aha, Andrew, see, that's why your review is invalid. Understand, every soundbar gets treated the same way.
And put in the same place.
And put in the same place, in the same room. And the Samsung doesn't have the gaps overhead. The Sonos Ultimate whatever system, no gaps overhead. Bose, no gaps overhead. And so...
Same for the Sony Quad.
I'm going to get to the Sony Quad. So yeah, it's not that it can't, but class leading is not a word or a phrase that I would use to describe its overhead effects, unless you're just focusing on these demos where it's like, here it comes. Even there's like a narrator telling you it's coming from the rear. And then it's like, ooh, now it's over to your left, and it's just like, that's not content. I mean, that's content you'll throw on for your friends and be like, check this out. But you're not sitting down with a glass of wine or a beer every freaking night, just watching that going, man, this bar kicks ass,
Well, yeah. And I really do believe that those verbal visual cues, really are influential.
Yeah.
And so if you're not going to acknowledge that, it's hard for me to take you seriously.
Yeah.
And it's just a very, very different experience.
Yes.
When you turn on an actual movie that might be released in the theater, like Top Gun Maverick or whatever, and the Atmos effects are often non-existent.
Yeah.
So to me, there's really no comparison with any of the other systems Andrew's already mentioned. They're better in that respect.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, just because something's loud, it doesn't excuse everything else.
Yeah.
Now, I know you said you were going to get to the quad. Did you have anything else to say to Ryan from Texas?
No, that'd be enough.
Okay. Well, Tegman 2 wants you to elaborate more on the musical performance of the Dragon.
Okay.
Which, I mean, I know you gave a pretty definitive statement.
I mean, I'm just going to try and give you the information as best I can. Look, the Dragon, in my experience and in measurements, does not have a great deal of dispersion. That is different, by the way, than having side firing drivers or upward firing drivers that you can simply max out to create a wider wall of sound. That's not the same thing as just good old-fashioned dispersion. And when a speaker has dispersion characteristics like what the Dragon appears to have, when listening to music, and I'm not talking Atmos encoded music, which does sound different through the Dragon, but maybe some of your favorite music that's still in, stereo. Do you have the ability to faux surround the crap out of it using one of the presets? You bet you do. You absolutely do. But if you're just treating it like, no, but I find that faux surround, it monkeys with it a little bit. I don't like hearing the, lead singer vocals behind me if it's not done correctly. On its own, even with the subs, the bar is super directional, and artists' instruments really feel kind of trapped inside the bar or confined within a very narrow window of space around the bar. It just doesn't bloom the same way. And this was made immediately apparent when all we did was take the HDMI cable out of the Dragon and go immediately into the Sonos Arc. The Sonos Arc, while if I was just listening to the Sonos Arc, or I just walked into the room with the Sonos Arc and you play in stereo, I'd be like, that's nice for a soundbar, but it's not quite giving me the two speaker stereo experience, but it's quite good. The second we went to the Sonos Arc, it might as well have been a pair of stereo speakers. Like, that's just the dispersion, how they have set that speaker up for stereo is like, oh, okay, well, there it is. It didn't feel trapped. The Bose was even crazier, where it's like, oh, shoot. It's like this whole phantom everything everywhere. It was insane. And all we were doing was just HDMI cable, from one to the next and all of that. So I think the Dragon is terrible for music. I really do. And the fact that it's so beamy and so directional, it just makes listening to music very forceful. And when I would play stuff like from Luna, it's a pianist, you don't want someone, her music doesn't sound like this. She's playing, but every note, and you can argue but that's the clarity. Right. But I play the piano, and sometimes you want the ping, you want the hit, and you put it on there. You put some stank on it. But other times, that's not what you're going for. And if the artist is playing this way, but the instrument, the tool for its replication, only knows how to interpret sound one way, I'm going to argue you're not enjoying or not experiencing the artist's intent. And I really felt, especially when listening to tracks from Luna, I'm like, this is sharp, man. This is hard. And her music's not like that.
Well, yeah, and I mean, if you know how to read music, there are elements of any piece that will tell you when to play loudly, and when to
back the hell off.
Yeah, and it's like, oh, the Nakamichi just says, we don't need your sheet music.
Fortissimo.
Well, this is time for my absolute favorite part of Unplugged.
Okay.
Responding to the, but are you sure? Did you really? Comments.
Oh, boy. Okay. All right.
So here's a new argument that truly makes no sense to me.
Oh, I can't wait.
And I promise you, John, I am not picking on you because this idea has become very popular in some corners of the internet.
Yeah.
Basically in response to someone else saying, that they appreciate the time we take living with a product and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
John Dio says he didn't live with it. He already returned it just for the review.
And?
Yeah, people really,
I mean, look.
There's a whole group of people that are like, he's not a true owner,
Yeah.
They're really focusing in on, well, did you keep it?
Yeah, look, my bank account completely disagrees with the true owner comment because I truly felt the $3,450.12 or whatever it was that I spent. I truly felt that for 30 days. I don't know about you, but I don't just have 3, 4, 5, 6 grand lying around to just throw away every 28 to 35 days. And for the record, we've spent a lot of money this year on reviews that we are still trying to recoup through regular old AdSense views. I did some math for one guy on the comments where it's like, I paid $2,100 for a Eversolo A8 and for a review, and I never had any intention of keeping it. I was going to review it. Turns out the thing was amazing and solved a lot of problems for me. So I was like, well, shoot, it's here. And I like it. I really genuinely like it. So I'm going to keep it, And
Same thing happened with the Titans.
The Titans, here's $4,000. $4,000. So just right there, those two products, I'm into the channel. $6,300. I think combined, I've made maybe $600, $700 off both of those in terms of AdSense revenue, and that's before taxes. Come on. Let's be real here. So yeah, did I keep the Dragon? No, I didn't. Had it turned out to be the greatest thing since sliced bread, had it, been like Wyatt Earp in Tombstone, just over there walking on water, I probably would have tried to figure out how to keep it, even though right now I legitimately probably couldn't absorb that hit. But this notion that discounts everything that I have to say or my experience is...
It's unfair.
It's not, it's stupid.
Yeah.
Let's just call it what it is. It's stupid.
The unit we received arrived with damage marks.
It arrived with fingerprints and hair and,
So even if we had loved it and wanted to keep it, I certainly I would not expect it to have to keep that particular sample for $3,500 or whatever.
Yeah.
Plus pay $400 to return it, considering it didn't arrive
in primo shape,
in new condition like it should have.
Well, I think
just,
there's a reason for that, though.
What do you mean?
Well, I think because there have been so many known issues with shipping damage, and rumor has it that this bar is about to be sent out in multiple boxes instead of the big coffin you've been seeing people get to mitigate damage, and probably to mitigate shipping costs, if I'm being honest as well. I think the reason why our unit was covered in hair, dander or dandruff, fingerprints, and a few dents is, I believe, Nakamichi has done or made running changes in their shipping, and they're literally opening boxes at their warehouse of unsold units, going in, inserting some plexiglass plate and all of that, as well as probably unboxing the bar itself to flash it with the latest firmware, because that's something that when you buy a Dragon, at least on Amazon, like one of the first confirmation emails that I got also said, oh, by the way, we've updated it with the latest firmware, so it's ready to go. And I appreciate that. I'm not knocking them for any reason. But in going back over, that might explain why there were just, it looked like a CSI scene, like why there were so many hand fingerprints and all of that. There were literal human hairs, dandruff, whatever, on the bar. And then, yes, I agree with you. If I was going to keep this bar, I would have sent it back for a replacement that didn't have dents, because at $3,400, I have a reasonable expectation not to have a dented product. But ultimately, there were so many other things about the product that, again, I illustrate in the video that for me, it's like I wouldn't have kept this regardless.
Well, Mr. Martini has one of our favorites. Must have gotten a bad unit.
Okay. We didn't. We didn't. And I know we didn't, because I conferred with other people that have had or have the Dragon, and I compared notes, and in a lot of ways, some of their anecdotal notes or their direct notes coincided with ours. That's all I'm going to say. We don't have a bad unit.
All right. I know you didn't want this to go as long as it's gone, but here we are, babe. But I think we've come to a place where we can start to wrap it up.
Okay.
Everybody wants to know what I think.
Oh, didn't you already tell them?
No.
Oh, all right.
No.
I just get to sit back and listen.
Yeah, yeah. So at Warm Freeze left a comment that kind of spoke to me.
Okay.
They say, I've been literally ridiculed because I don't think the Dragon sounds better than a $2,000 AVR Clips speaker setup at all. And in my opinion, I don't think it's worth $4,000.
Okay.
I just felt like the Dragon got loud, but didn't sound good to me. It seems like people mistake loud for sounding good. And what I really identified with out of Warm Freeze's comment was it sounds loud, but not good. You know, that's exactly what I would describe my experience with the Dragon. It's loud.
Yeah.
It comes out swinging like...
Yeah, that's what happens, man.
Oh my God!
Yeah, that's what happens. Where's my money? You gonna give me my money? Where's my money, man?
And I get it. That can be impressive
Yeah.
during like a 5-minute demo. I guess, but I don't know. I expect more from a $4,000 system or $35,000 for $35,000. That's Nakamichi.
They're not that crazy.
Yeah, no, 3,500, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I just expect more from a system that's supposed to replace an entire home theater.
Right.
Another viewer commented about Nakamichi's tinny sound, and while they were actually speaking about one of their older soundbars, I'm guessing probably the Shockwave,
Okay.
not the Dragon. That was really in line with my experience with the Dragon.
Yeah.
For example, when we weren't testing the Dragon with like big action movies or those Dolby demos, we actually watched a lot of the Olympics.
Yeah.
While we had the Dragon, and I get it. The live nature of an Olympic broadcast or sports broadcast, that mix is always going to have its own issues, you know, but regardless, we did compare the sound of the announcers with other soundbars because I actually thought it was the mix and not the Dragon. And so I wanted to make sure that I had a real solid answer for myself.
Right.
So I asked Andrew to pull out some oldies, like a bar we haven't even reviewed that we've had forever.
Oh, right.
Sorry, Polk.
Yeah, yeah.
The Magnify
or
Max or
something
whatever.
like that. Yeah.
We also pulled out the tiny Bose 600 and obviously the Sonos Arc or whatever. But only the Dragon made the announcer sound as if they were speaking through like a tin cup, or like they had that, you know, that old tiny radio effect.
Yeah, there was a warble to the sound and sibilance. It was awfully spitty.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was, I mean, I didn't even get into like the distortion figures of my measurements because at that point I'm like, you know what, we don't need to do this. But yeah, there were some instances on the bar and the sub especially where it's like, look, it's hitting that note. And then I'm looking over at the THD figures and the distortion harmonics and all that. And I'm like, 10%. Oh God. That's bad.
And I was going to go on to say what I felt the reason maybe behind that was, and maybe that's what you've just described. I don't know.
Yeah.
But for me, even the small 600s sounded better, which I was actually shocked. You guys.
I was too.
I was floored.
Yeah. I mean, we have a photo. I'll pull it off my phone of just Dragon.
Oh, I took, I was trying to get all artistic. I was trying to frame in the huge sound bars and then like the polk that we were, doing head to heads. And anyway. So I felt that the Bose sounded more clear.
Yeah.
It definitely sounded more natural than the Dragon. And from my perspective, the 600 as well as the others, they all played the bars, all played deeper.
Oh yeah.
Than the Dragon, which, again, looking at just visually, this tiny 600 is like, how is that even possible?
Yeah.
The Dragon's bar is anemic in comparison. I mean, so it's no wonder that the crowd noise and even the announcer voices were often coming from the subs, which is a huge distraction. Yeah. So I guess if all you're going to do is just hit play on, I don't even know, like a battleship movie or some
something brash, big,
then go with God. But everybody else, like, there's so much else missing. Yeah. Moving on to dialogue, which is really a very important aspect of any system for me.
Yep.
Is the Dragon crispy? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
But it also needs to be turned up to loud volumes in order to improve its intelligibility. Mm-hmm. Like, if you can tolerate listening at those kinds of volumes, then the Dragon is probably going to be a really good option for you.
Yeah.
But for me, it wasn't. And I saw a comment from Crandall Ty to quote him, or them, sorry, quiet scenes and subtle cues sounded flat and almost non-existent at times. Yeah. Then it would suddenly punch us in the ears when there was an action scene. Yeah. And this describes my experience and my feeling absolutely perfectly.
Yeah.
I mean, look, at the end of the day, I wanted this to be great. Because after waiting so long, the last thing you want to do is be disappointed,
Yeah.
And I think it would have been a lot more fun for everybody, including us, had we come away with a different experience. I mean, heck, this could have been like an old Emotiva review for me where I was just like, I love it, but boy, it's ugly,
Yeah, I was hoping that would be the worst critique.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Like, the looks are a little bit,
Which I know are subjective, but at least I could have had something more positive to say.
Yeah.
And I just don't get it. I don't get it. I mean, I get it. I get why some people love it, but then I'm still perplexed by a lot of other things. Yeah. Like, I'm just going to pay $3,500, $4,000 or whatever, but I'm going to just forgive the lack of everything.
Yeah, I don't care that you could go out on a limb and maybe have a case for they're misrepresenting what I've paid money for. Like, I'm just going to forgive all of that. I don't get it. I used to say I don't get it when we pointed out some deficiencies in like a $200 or $300 product. Like, hey, this free 99 amplifier is advertising 300 watts and it's not doing it. And people are like, well, you're just being a stick in the mud. And it's like, all right, for $69, $79, maybe I am being a stick in the mud. All right, fine. But I don't like when people mislead consumers. But at $3,500, the amount of just la 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 la. You know, it's like
It's weird.
it's freaking.
It's weird.
Weird.
It's weird, especially like I know I've brought this up with you, but this audience, this is the same audience that watched our leak whatever review, that amplifier.
Yeah.
Not the newest one. We haven't heard that one yet or got that
but just
yet.
the integrated.
The first
from
one,
a
the
year
first
ago, 2 years
relaunch,
ago.
you know,
Yeah.
kind of like the Dragon, like, oh, let's
Bring back something that was dead.
yeah, from the dead. Yeah. So there that thing, that amplifier had like the button on the front.
It's
Just a little cricket. Just a little bit cricket.
yeah.
didn't
Derailed the
think-
whole review.
We didn't think anything about it.
Yeah.
Didn't even mention it.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's all the comments were about.
Never
I can't
buying
believe.
this piece of crap.
Yeah, I can't believe this thing costs whatever it costs, and they can't even get the button straight.
Well, I mean, and I remember in that same conversation, like, not to pick on anybody, but it's like, you know, the internet is kind of forever. Like, your comment history can be searched. And, you know, some of you that were criticizing, like, oh, you were too critical, you were this, you were that. Like, I can see that you've been a person 2-3 years ago on our channel that is the same person that was kind of behind how I've had to change all of my reviews with respect to a subwoofer, because I want to say it was the Onkyo RZ50 review, but I believe that they were advertising that, you know, it was 9.2 channel or whatever it was, because there's 2 subwoofer outputs. And a lot of people, that review went very, very well, and a lot of people liked it, and a lot of people are very happy with their RZ50s, for the record. But a lot of people were quick to point out, like, hey, they're not independent. You know, they're summed. They're not independent. So technically, I think 0.2 is a bit of a stretch. And it's because of that review that we now, if it's not listed by a manufacturer, it's one of the first emails we fire off and say, hey, just FYI, or just for our own education here, are the subwoofers summed? Are they independent? Can we just get a definitive answer on that, so that we don't do that? And some of you were the people that are like, it's not 2, it's really 1. But now you're sitting here going, it's really 4. And it's like, what? Like, huh?
Yeah, and I think
How can you have it both ways?
right. And I just want to make it clear, like, I'm not picking on you if you were upset about the leak button not being straight.
It's just an example.
I get it. And you have every right to call something like that out.
Sure.
My confusion is over how the same audience can be upset about a crooked button, but can be okay with paying what you're paying for the Dragon and not have things like room correction or
Wi-Fi.
Wi-Fi. What the heck?
Yeah.
I mean, and everything else.
Yeah, just,
you know, we don't need to
everything.
rehash it.
Everything.
But it's just the confusion for me.
Yeah.
The goalposts often seem to change
Yeah.
minute by minute, and it makes it hard as a reviewer or somebody with a channel like this one to kind of keep up with what your expectations might be.
Yeah.
You know? So anyway, I think we can stop now.
Okay. We're closing the book on the Nakamichi Dragon. Probably just in time for them to be like, oh yeah, check this out.
Oh yeah, you know a new one's coming.
Oh, you know.
There's 2 new subs.
There's going to be new subs, bigger subs. The Dragon XL.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, more dragon, 2-headed dragon, you know? And of course, it's going to be like, see, they fixed everything. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. But
at
you
this
can't
point,
mark my words. It's coming.
yeah, it's
coming soon.
It's coming. If it hasn't already just been like, get it out the door, we need another story.
Yeah.
You know.
And keep in mind, we film these things about a week in advance. So if you're seeing this now and it's already came out,
Fortune teller.
yeah. Yes, I'm a witch.
All right, let's get out of here. Anything else?
No.
All right, guys, thanks so much for watching. Really, we do appreciate you guys tuning in, even when you don't like us for what we have to say, it's still...
Thanks for hate watching.
Thanks for hate watching.
See you next week.
See you next week. Bye.